From the blaze of emergency response to the beacon of security in retirement, this is the Atlas Annuity Podcast with your host, Marty Becker. Strap in, folks. Marty isn't your ordinary retirement planner. He's the financial firefighter who swapped his helmet for a headset to bring you the hottest safe money strategies in retirement without an ounce of burn. From guarding lives in the face of flames, Marty now shields your savings from the unpredictability of the stock market. He's the president, the owner, and annuity expert at Atlas Financial Strategies. Here's your host, Marty Becker.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Atlas Annuity Podcast. I'm your host, Marty Becker, and I'm the owner and founder of Atlas Financial Strategies in St. Louis, Missouri. In today's episode, we are going to talk about a topic that seems to confuse a lot of people, but hopefully by the end of today's show, you'll have a much better understanding of how annuities make money, or how your money grows inside of an annuity, or how does it increase in value. Whatever terminology you want to use is totally fine with me. So Leonardo da Vinci once quoted, "Simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication." My hope in all of these episodes is to simplify a subject that allows you to become more confident in your understanding and your decision-making when it comes to safe money retirement planning. So in our last podcast, we talked about the different types of annuities and how they grow, and we'll touch on those again very briefly. But the main one we're going to focus on today is the fixed indexed annuity, because this seems to be the one that causes the most confusion for everyone. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to share my screen here to give you some visuals. And if you're listening on the podcast, hopefully I can live up to Da Vinci's quote and make this as simplistic as possible to at least come across sophisticated to you. So the first type of annuity that we talked about in the last episode was the single premium immediate annuity and the deferred income annuity. These are very simple because they have no growth component to them. They're designed strictly for income. The second type of annuity that we discussed in the last episode was the multi-year guaranteed annuity, or MYGA for short. Again, these are very simple to understand because they work just like a bank CD. It's a guaranteed amount of interest for a guaranteed amount of time. The variable annuity invests your money into sub-accounts which are tied directly to the stock market or mutual funds. Remember, this is the one that I call the sheep in wolf's clothing, because when you hear the word annuity, you think that your money is protected. That is not the case in variable annuities. Because your money is in these sub-accounts, which invest directly into the stock market or mutual funds, you can 100% lose money inside of a variable annuity. Okay, so let's jump into the fixed indexed annuity. When you fund a fixed indexed annuity, you will have the option to take a fixed interest rate for growth, or you can track a stock market index. I use the term track a market index very intentionally because it's important to understand that your money is not invested directly into the stock market. And that's how the annuity protects your money from a downturn. So I want you to think of the index as a scoreboard of a game that you're watching, but you're not actually playing. So back to the basics, what is an index if you're unfamiliar with that term? A stock market index is just a group of publicly traded companies that are all grouped together. And their overall performance depends on whether the index has a positive return or a negative return. Probably the most well-known index, which everyone has heard of, is the S&P 500. The last time that I checked, there are thousands of indexes out there. And I believe with the annuity industry, there's about 180 different indexes that you can choose from. Each annuity company out there will normally give you a minimum of 5 different indexes to choose from. And each company is a little different because some of them have proprietary indexes that they have helped design that they will allow you to participate in. So you will have the option of either tracking a single index like the S&P 500, or you can track multiple indexes at the same time, which is normally a good idea because when you diversify inside of the annuity, you will actually have an increased chance for consistent growth because some years, some indexes will be up while others are down. And other years, those indexes that may have been down the previous year, they'll be up and vice versa. Each annuity company will give you the choice of around minimum 5 different indexes that you can track. You can track a single index, but I normally recommend to my clients that they track multiple indexes because when you diversify your money inside of the annuity, you will have a better chance of consistent growth. Each index will have either a cap rate, a participation rate, or a spread attached to it. And this is what is called a crediting strategy. We touched on this a little bit in the last episode, but I'm going to go ahead and do a quick refresher on it. A spread is the amount of interest that you would earn above the spread rate. For example, if you have a 5% spread and the index goes up by 10%, you would get everything above that spread. So in that example, 5%. A cap rate is just what it sounds like. It's a cap. It's a ceiling. You cannot go higher than whatever the assigned cap rate is. So for instance, if you have a 5% cap rate and the index goes up by 10%, you're going to get 5%. I'm not a huge fan of cap rates, but the most popular indexes like the S&P 500, they normally have cap rates on them. A participation rate is the percentage of the returns that you will get with a positive performance. For example, if you have a 50% participation rate and the index goes up by 10%, you would get 50% of those returns, or in this case, 5% growth. And again, I'm going to repeat this in case you haven't heard episode 2 or you missed it. The annuity company does not keep the difference above the cap rates or above the participation rates. I'll get into a lot more detail on how that works in later episodes. But again, I just wanted to bust that myth that annuity companies keep the difference between the return of the index and whatever your cap rate or your participation rate might be. That is 100% untrue. It is a complete myth. And really the best way to bust that myth is to show you an example of a participation rate over 100%. Because if the annuity company is making their profit based on the difference between the cap rate or the participation rate and what the index returns, if you have an index that you're tracking that offers a 150% participation rate, in that example, if the index goes up 10%, you would be credited 15%. So in that case, the annuity company would have to pay you an additional 5% out of their pocket. And I can assure you, annuity companies are not in the business of just handing money out. They would go broke very quickly. So that's not a good business model for them. And there are a lot of indexes that are available that have participation rates over 100% or higher, actually. So right there, you can see there has to be another way that the annuity company is actually making their profit. And again, we'll get into all the details on how that works in a later episode. Okay, so those are crediting methods of how your money actually grows in value. So once we know what index you want to track, then we're going to select the crediting term. A crediting term or a crediting period is a measurement of time that we want to track the index that you've chosen. So think of it this way. The day your policy is issued, the annuity company will take a snapshot of the value of that index. Then you get to decide when will the next snapshot be taken of that same index to see if it has increased in value or if it has decreased in value. The measurements of time or those snapshots are offered in 1, 2, 3, 5, and even up to 6-year terms. So when you hear the term a 1-year point-to-point or a 2-year point-to-point, what that means is the day your policy is issued, they're taking a snapshot of the value of that index you're tracking. And then in either 1 year or 2 years, they're going to take a second snapshot to determine if that index has it increased in value or decreased in value. My personal recommendation is really never to go beyond a 2-year point-to-point, and preferably split the money across 1-year point-to-points and 2-year point-to-points, because that way at least you're catching the index at the end of every year. If you go with a 3 or 6-year point-to-point term, yes, the participation rates are going to be quite a bit higher, but just in case that the index for whatever reason just happens to be down when the annuity company takes that second snapshot, 6 years is a very long time to wait and not have any growth in your annuity. So stick with 1 year or 2-year point-to-points. Let me throw out a couple examples to you to see if you caught what I was saying today, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Let's say you're tracking a 1-year point-to-point with a 100% participation rate. The value of the index when you started was at 100. 12 months later, it's valued at 110. What is your growth rate that year? Correct, 10%. So let's take that same example of an index that is increased by 10% in value, but you have a 5% cap rate. What would your growth rate be that year? Correct, 5%, because you have a cap. You can never go above the cap. That's why I personally don't like to use caps. Same example again. The index went up by 4%, but you have a 5% cap. What would be your growth rate that year? Correct, 4%, because you will get everything between 0 and 5% return in a cap. A little bit of a trick question here. Let's say that same index actually decreased in value by 10%. How much money did you lose? Again, trick question. Nothing, because you cannot lose money in a fixed indexed annuity due to a market downturn. There's an old saying in the annuity industry, 0 is your hero. All right, everyone, thank you for listening, and I hope that has cleared up any confusion that you may have had of how annuities grow in value. If you have any questions or you're interested in seeing what annuities could be appropriate for you, I would recommend going over to atlasannuity.com to book a short phone call with me. And then you can also navigate from that page to all my other annuity resources on my website, including my flagship video series, 20% More Spendable Income in Retirement. If you found today's information helpful, subscribe and share this information with anyone that you think could benefit from it. Our goal is to get this information out there to as many people as possible before it's too late and people lose money in their retirement plans. By liking, sharing, and subscribing, you actually make it easier for other people to find me. And again, the whole goal is to educate America on safe money retirement products. Again, this is Marty Becker, wishing you all the best in your financial education, and we'll see you in the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Atlas Annuity Podcast. All information presented is for educational purposes only and is not a recommendation to implement any tax strategy, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or transfer any security or insurance products. Atlas Financial Strategies Incorporated is an insurance-only licensed entity, and any decisions to buy or sell securities should be discussed with a licensed securities advisor, and any tax strategy should be discussed with a licensed tax professional. Past performance of any strategies or products mentioned are not a guarantee of future returns. For any other questions or concerns, please go to www.atlasannuity.com.